Hello, everyone. Welcome to TribeWell TV, Triangle Be Well. I'm your host, Howard Jacobson, and I'm in the studio today with, guess who? That's right, Amnon Nisan.
I'm here.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, or as we say, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And Gmar Chatima Tova.
Yes, yes.
Like that.
Gmar Chatima Tova.
May you be signed in the book of...
Tov, good life.
Yeah, good life.
Good
So,
life.
Yeah.
And Tapuchim Udvash.
Shana Tova umetuka kadavash.
Okay,
It's,
so if you're confused,
that-
you didn't spend hours at Hebrew school, and you haven't grown up in Israel. We're just wishing each other. We're trash talking Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which it is today.
Right?
And
We're not trash talking it. That's
yeah.
what you say. You say Shana Tova umetuka kadavash, which means have a new year sweet as apples and honey.
Right on. For all you vegans out there, maple syrup.
Maple syrup.
Or,
Why? Honey is not good?
well, not vegan, right? Because it comes
Really?
it comes from bees.
Oh,
Bee food.
interesting.
So
I
we're not
wasn't aware of
we're
that.
not going to get into that today, though.
Okay.
Instead, I want to talk about something
More exciting.
much more exciting. I want to brag. Okay.
Oh,
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
No. Let's put it differently. I'm going to share some experiences that I've had recently. So the experience is, some of you may know, I was training for a 50-kilometer race known as a 50K. And for those of us who do not grow up on the metric system, we translate it into 31 miles, just so we can wrap our heads around it. So that race was on Saturday. Today is Monday, so I'm 2 days recovered, if you can call it that. And I just want to talk about it because I learned a bunch of stuff that I think might be useful. So first, let's frame it. I started on this path because of a desire to do participatory journalism. So there's a long history of journalists, writers, wanting to write about something and discovering that it was hard to write about it from the outside, that they had to kind of wiggle their way in so they could write from experience and not just from other people's experiences. So famously, there was, I think, George Plimpton, who was a reporter who did a lot of stuff with Sports Illustrated, who kind of joined sports teams. Then there's lots of cases of this, but then my friend Stefan Fatsis, who is a NPR sports business reporter, wrote a fantastic book about the National Football League called A Few Seconds of Panic, in which he actually tried to join a football team to become like the third string place kicker, and explained what that experience was like from the inside. And so when in the spring of this year, Josh Lajani and I started talking about collaborating on his story. Thank you very much for the water. Today's episode is brought to you by Agua, H2O, Maim Metukim. Good stuff. A lot of his story, and if you don't know, Josh is an ultra runner. He's plant-based, and he's from the bayou, the swamps of Louisiana, and grew up eating a very meat-centric diet, was a hunter, fisherman, party boy, didn't really take much care of his body, and he'd ballooned to well over 400 pounds when he started to turn his life around. And he started to turn his life around not with plants, but with running, which is maybe a little bit different than I would advise people. You want to make sure that you have the fuel in your tank, the proper fuel, before you go on a trip. But Josh did it his way, and it's worked out beautifully. And so as we were talking, there were a number of his experiences that I simply couldn't relate to at all, just because of our different upbringings. But certainly I could relate to the benefits, the health benefits of a plant-based diet. But I didn't really get the running. like, okay, I thought, okay, it's exercise. And I know people talk about running and they talk about runners' highs. And I used to be a competitive runner if you only count like Jews at summer camp. I was I was fairly competitive. Um, the longest distance I ever competed in was a half a mile. So I think it's a little short to achieve a runner's high. You know, I would just sort of get the high that you get from not falling down. Um, and then in high school, I ran track. Um, I was like 30 pounds heavier than the next heaviest sprinter. I think I just didn't have the attention span for anything longer than a quarter mile. Um, so after the sprints, you know, I'd be in like we have these regional high school meets, and I'd be in like, you know, heat 38 with with 10 people in each heat. So you can see I really wasn't anywhere near the top, but I was very useful because I was one of the few sprinters who was heavy enough to be able to stand between the 60-meter dash, 60-yard dash in those days, and the shot put area. So I was big enough to stop runners from like crashing into where they shouldn't be. So I had some experience with running, but it was sprinting. I wasn't very good. And so when Josh is talking about all the things that you can learn from running and the ways running can help you and the ways running really makes us authentic human beings. In the same way, you know, if you saw birds and all of a sudden they stopped flying and they would just sort of hop around, or they would, like the bird wants to get from one end of your driveway to the other, and they just sort of hop onto your car and just wait for you to drive. Like we think that was kind of weird. You know, birds fly. If you saw a snake and the snake was like trying to do a tango or something across your yard, you're like, that's weird. The snake slithers. And the squirrels, you know, chitter and run and jump up trees, and every animal has like a preferred means of locomotion, right? If you had a fish pond, you wouldn't expect the fish to be, you know, army crawling between one pond and the other. You know, they kind of stay in the water. And Josh's argument was that, well, humans are bipedal, almost, you know, alone among creatures. We are two-legged creatures. We don't really need our arms for balance or support. Our arms are freed to help us climb trees, pick fruit, pick other things. And so our human heritage is bipedal locomotion, or walking, jogging, running. And I'm like writing it all down, taking notes, thinking, and we have a great week together discussing. I'm interviewing him, I'm recording it. And our last day, we're at a plant-based conference. We're sitting in the lobby of the conference center and planning out our next move. And suddenly I blurt out, you know, maybe I should run a 50K. And Josh gets this look on his face, like half delight and half a little bit horror. And then if we can, you know, go above 100%, maybe a third. Yeah, I've heard all that before. Lots of people get inspired and they say they're going to do stuff, but he plays along. He's like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That's cool. So we fire up a browser and we take a look and we start looking at different potential races. And he's giving me the lowdown on, well, that race, maybe not so much because it's very challenging. It's very hilly. Here's what you're looking for. And then we found, you know, and then when do you want to do it? Well, this was sort of end of May. You know, let's not do it too soon, but you want to give yourself a good time. So we discovered a flat, non-technical 50K on October 1st in Fries, Virginia, or Fries, Virginia. Who wouldn't run for fries, right? So that was 2 days ago. So in my mind, I signed up for it, but I didn't sign up for it on paper because I wasn't entirely sure, and I didn't want to, you know, put too much pressure on myself or waste $75 if this wasn't gonna work out. So I had a lot of questions for Josh, who is now my coach, and Now it's kind of weird. Like I was the center of my own attention, as opposed to trying to figure out everything about Josh and Josh's story and what made him tick. Now this has suddenly become my story as well. And we've talked about stories a lot on this show. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about this idea of other people's stories and the so what factor. So you hear someone else's story, or you watch a movie, or you read a novel, or you hear something on the news, and it's kind of inspiring, and you go, so what? Well, so what it turns out is that Josh's story was inspiring enough to me that I wanted to have my own story. I wanted to be part of it. I didn't want to just bask as his co-author, and we'd write a book together and people would say, wow, that's so great what Josh did. I wanted to do something great too. And I'm not saying anything against being a co-author. I think that's a fantastic, useful thing. I'm proud of the work I've done. I know lots of other people who are co-authors or contributing authors or ghostwriters who do tremendous work. But in this case, I wanted to write my own story as well. And I don't know if it'll ever get into the book that I'm doing with Josh, but it's a story that I wanted to write with my own muscles and sweat and relentlessness upon the world. And that's kind of how I started seeing my training. So a couple weeks later, Josh sent me a PDF of a training plan that I took a picture from some magazine, or I don't know exactly where he got it from, but it basically had 12 weeks of how many miles you're supposed to run every day to train for a 50K. And it included the mileage, and sometimes it would have little details. Like some of them are fartleks, which is a Swedish word meaning fastnesses or something, where you have to, you sort of, you do your 8 miles, but whenever you feel like it or whatever you think about it, you run really fast for a mile and then you can sort of slow down. So it's adding speed work. Some of them were tempo runs where you have to, go kind of faster than you ordinarily would for the whole run. Some of them were split up between morning and afternoons. And I guess there's a whole science to it. And I'm sure there's lots of other ways to do it. But I decided, okay, Josh sent me this list of what to do when. And look, I'm really into like making up my own mind and not becoming like a drone and not just parroting something of someone else's. And at the same time, I decided he's my coach. I've just asked him for this help. I'm going to do everything he says, pretty much without question. So I don't really know how to explain that paradox, because I don't tell people to do that. When I give people advice, I never say, never question it. But there was something about that kind of surrender. Say, look, I've never run this race. Josh has run a bunch of them. He's part of a living, breathing, interacting community of folks who are all doing. There's a lot of knowledge that's been crystallized into what I've just been given, and I'm not going to second guess it.
How could you question somebody if you don't have experience in what they are teaching you?
Yeah.
If you know nothing about it.
Well, here it's easy.
How? Well, no.
I could go for my first run of 6 miles, and I would hurt the next day, and I'd say, no, this doesn't feel right for me.
Well, that's not questioning. That's giving up, kind of.
No, but then I say, well, you know what? I'll just do half as much. I'll start slower.
Well.
Right? I'll only do 3 miles. I'll go slower than I thought. You know what? All this running is not so good. I'm going to include some bicycling or spin classes. And there's many ways in which I could have. Right.
Okay.
And suppose I'd gone running the first day and I come back and I discover like I can't put weight on the foot the next day, and I go for an X-ray and I have a cracked tibia. Right. So like the next day I don't go 8 miles on a cracked tibia. The trouble is, so I think all of us have a default where if we're not sure of something, some of us are going to try to like be too gung-ho about it and like, I don't care, I'm going to push through no matter what. And some of us are going to be like, whoa, 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 and we're going to be too careful. So I think all of us have a tendency either to be sort of, not careful enough or too careful. And for me, I know I'm too careful. Right? So I can talk myself out of lots of things. And in fact, at the end of the race, I talked myself out of something that I'll talk about later. And I still don't know if it was entirely the right decision or not. It was a learning.
It was.
Yeah, thank you.
It was.
It might have been. But so knowing that my tendency is to play it safe. So well, the trouble with playing it safe is you never get negative feedback for playing it safe. So you can never know when you're playing it too safe. So for example, I used to do sales training, teach people how to sell. The biggest problem people have with selling is not the selling, it's getting to talk to the person they want to sell to. It's getting past the gatekeeper. So I'd explain, think of the gatekeeper. Let's say it's an administrative assistant to the person you're trying to reach. And you call them up and they have to decide whether to put you through to their boss or not. Suppose you're a complete idiot and you're selling crap. Then if they put you through, they lose. If they don't put you through, nothing happens. It's not a win. Now, suppose you're selling the greatest thing in the world that your boss is absolutely requiring to be successful. It's going to fill a huge problem. No one else has come close, and you know. So now you put me through to your boss. Maybe it's a win. But if you don't put me through to your boss, what's the loss?
The potential loss.
Yeah, to you, to your career. There's none.
It's not a loss.
It's not a loss. It's not a loss. So if you put me through, you have the potential to lose.
Right.
If you don't put me through, you can't lose.
True. Okay, I see what you're talking about.
So that's what I'm talking about. If you never take a risk, you never get negative feedback from the effects of that risk. And so suppose I decide, I'm not going to go running. I'm not going to try to do this 50K. I'm not going to try it. Then I live my life and I never know what it would have been like and I don't even miss it. So I know that I'm a cautious person. So to me, the thing that was going to push me out of my comfort zone, that was going to give me information about my life that I wouldn't get otherwise, was let me take some risks. And there were several weeks in the middle of my training where I felt like I was injuring myself. Like my left foot was really hurting. My good friend, rehab doc, showed me how to tape it, how to put on Metapore tape and support it, and that helped me kind of get through the runs. But it didn't make it better. There were whole weeks where I wasn't sure, I like to go run barefoot or just very minimalist sandals, but I was wearing more and more padded shoes just to try to protect my foot. I went to my physical therapist, Total Motion in Raleigh, and they took a look and said, that one of my feet, it wasn't flexible enough, so I was making, I wasn't distributing, sort of splatting the impact. It was just kind of staying localized, and that was causing some pain and repetitive. So it wasn't like I'm just running and everything's going great. Like I'm having problems. Sometimes my back would hurt, my right knee, my left foot. And, I listened to people about dealing with it. Like, so I'd use a roller, I would do various exercises, try to rehab myself, but I almost never changed the daily workouts. There was a couple of times when I changed them just because I was supposed to run 18 miles on Saturday morning, but I was doing the Apex Farmers Market. And if I got up at 4 and I would have been dead for the farmers market, or I would have missed it. And so I said, okay, well, so what I'll do, I'll skip Saturday and then I'll do Sunday and Monday what I would have done on Saturday. So, and there was priorities. And part of the training was, if you do it every day, it doesn't matter if you miss a day. right? So the idea is like it's a gestalt. It's not like, like with diet. If you eat a stellar, healthy, clean diet and you have a piece of cake, it's probably for most people, unless you have cancer, heart disease, something, it's not gonna that blip is not gonna make a difference. So again, we're looking for the pattern, and so I decided I was going to stick with this pattern. So I created a new Google Calendar called Running, and every morning in bright fluorescent green was a number. And I knew I woke up, that the first thing I had to accomplish was that number of miles. Um, so what I noticed, so I would, I also didn't like enjoy running. Like, and the miles I had to do to train for 50K were much, much more. When I had sort of been jogging just for just general health and to feel good, I would do 4 miles, but I would actually like walk a quarter of a mile or jog. I'd stop and walk up a hill. Like there was nothing serious about it. So when I had to start doing these real miles, it was very unpleasant. And it's just so I would go really, really slow. And I'm telling you, so it's okay. It's 50K. You can go slow. This is not about speed. But it soon became apparent that the goal of this was not to be comfortable. The goal of this was to find the right amount of discomfort that allowed me to constantly be recovering and getting better. And recovering while I was training didn't feel like I was getting stronger. Like I never, like when you think about it, if I keep piling on miles, and I was running 6 days a week, and for most of the training, I was up to 60 miles a week, which means so about an average of 8 miles Tuesday through Friday. Mondays I would take off, 8 miles Tuesday through Friday, and then, so that's 32, and then 30 miles on the weekend. So, 15 and 15, or 20 and 10, or 22 and 8, or something like that. So, somebody writing in? So, this was cumulative, and it kept feeling worse and worse. Like it wasn't like a month in, I was noticing any improvement. Right? I was still tired. I was still kind of going slow, and I was questioning, like how long it was taking me. Especially then when I joined this community called Strava, which is an online. It's like Facebook for athletes, especially for triathletes, where you can post your runs, your cycles, your swims, and then everyone else can see it. And it's a form of accountability and inspiration and bragging and well, it's either bragging or the opposite. But the trouble is, I was, Josh introduced me to this. And so now all his friends are friending me, and I'm looking at their runs. And I'm starting to compare myself to them. Like, wow, he just went for an 8-mile run, averaging 7-minute miles. So my 8-mile runs where I was averaging 10, 11-minute miles. So in my head, I'm like picturing myself, hey, let's go running. And they run off. And I'm sort of like this old, slow dude loping around. And my times were kind of getting slower and slower and slower because of all the wear and tear on my body. And it was only the taper, which was about 2 weeks, of then gradually reducing the mileage. And the last week was supposed to be pretty mild. So like Tuesday, 6 miles, Wednesday, 6 miles, Thursday, 4 miles, Saturday, 3 miles. Never have I run 4 and 3 miles in 12 weeks, and that was supposed to rest my legs and get me ready for the race. And what happened was on Sunday, I woke up and I felt like crap. I was like sick. Right? I didn't come in last week.
That's right, yeah.
So I had like a flu-like symptoms, a head cold, and so it's Sunday. I'm supposed to run. I'm supposed to run my 7 miles. I did 10 on Saturday. And I'm supposed to run 7 on Sunday. I'm like, no, I'll do it tomorrow. I have that wiggle room. I woke up on Monday. I still don't feel good. And so now, for the first time, I am breaking with the protocol that Josh set out from this training plan. And I'm questioning myself. Like, should I be doing it? Is this really, am I bailing at the last minute? Is this a pattern? And going all sorts of mental stuff going on. And I sort of checked in. I said, well, you know, I have gone to pain and to discomfort a lot, many, many hours. In fact, one of the things that I've started to love about running is even if I run crazy amounts, like, you know, 2 hours on, you know, 3 hours on the weekend, 4 hours on the weekend, 5 hours on the weekend, and then an hour and a half every weekday except for Monday, I still spend most of my time not running. And that not running time feels so good. So I'd put myself through a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And so I thought, am I really trying to avoid that now? Or is my body really in need of rest? And I rested on Monday, on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And Wednesday, so I had my 6 miles to go, and I did them real slow as I possibly could. Then I thought Thursday and Friday, I'm just going to take it easy. I'm not even going to look at my watch. You know, I got one the other day. I got a Garmin Forerunner 220 GPS enabled watch that allows me to train, and I can look at my paces. So now I'm feeling like, okay, I'm not running any faster, but at least I'm smarter about it. So Thursday, I'm just going to press the button, turn it on, and just do a nice leisurely run. Remember, so I'd taken almost the week off, and I'd done a really slow recovery run on Thursday. It was almost embarrassing. I didn't even want to post it on Strava. It was like 11.5-minute miles. So Thursday, I did my 4 miles. And then when I finished, I looked at it and I realized, wow, that was at a 9-minute pace. Like, that's speedy. But I hadn't intended to run at a 9-minute pace. It just sort of happened. That's really interesting. Friday, I woke up, pretty much the same thing. Like, that felt like a normal pace. And I live, you know, I wasn't running in a very hilly area, but it's not completely flat either. So it wasn't like just going to a track and running around. So that's kind of interesting. So.
And what was it on Friday?
Friday was 3 miles. It's
No,
around
I
a
mean,
9-minute.
Okay,
9-minute.
so
pace.
again, 9 minutes.
Yeah, I could look it up.
No, I mean, I'm just wondering if it changed.
Yeah, it was roughly.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, partly I knew I wasn't going to have to run very far. So part of me was thinking, well, so I can do, you know, I mean, when I try to run really fast, my sprint is a 4-minute mile. I can only keep it up for 50, 60 yards. But so, you know, if I were to try, if I said just run a mile, I could probably do it 7 minutes sub. I don't know, I haven't tried to do just a mile. But I was thinking maybe I'm going faster because I know I don't have a lot of miles to run today. But it didn't feel like it. I wasn't even thinking about it. It just felt like a good pace. So Friday afternoon, I drive off to Virginia, and I go and I look at the pre-register on Friday evening. I get a chance to look, and I see, like, for the first time, I see real runners, and I'm starting to feel a little intimidated. And they hand me this sort of mylar piece of paper with my number on it, number 36, and with little holes. And I don't know exactly what to do with it, but then I see there's a bag of safety pins. So I think, oh, I have to put it. Where do I put it? And I'm like, and then someone says, well, you know, the good runners don't put it on their shirts because sometimes they take their shirts off. So I said, well, okay, I'll do that. I only have 2 running shirts. I don't think
Pin it to your calf.
Yeah, I'll stick it on my head.
Yeah.
Straight in. Yeah, like a yarmulke. No, so I'm looking, so then, okay, well, I'll put it on my shorts. But then it's like right in the middle, and every time, so maybe I'll move it over to a single leg. But exactly, and I'm feeling like so amateur. Like I don't even know the first thing about where to put because it's called your bib, your race bib. I think it's called. I'm not even positive. So I'm like playing around. Does it go here? Does it go here? I don't know. And I see, like, real runners, and I'm looking at them, and like all I can do is compare myself. Like,
And where did they have it?
well, they weren't wearing it. They were just like walking around
Okay.
and just like meeting people and talking to them. And it's, oh yes, I've done 7 of these ultra races. And I was like, okay, well, you know, trying not to talk myself out of this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you know what? I know how to put one foot in front of the other, and that's all that's required. And if I have a choice. If I think I'm going to finish in more than 7 or 8 hours, they have a 7 a.m. start time. for everyone who wants to be in the real race, it's an 8 a.m. start time. So I have to decide, am I going to, I don't even know. So I talked to Josh. Said, like, what time am I going for here? He's like, well, you know, aim for doing it in 6 hours. So 6 hours is slightly under a 12-minute mile pace. So remember, I've never run anything this far before. I did a 25 mile about a month ago. And I actually did, it was like 5 runs. Like I would come into the kitchen, I would rest for 10 minutes, then I'd go back out. I have to look it up, how long my 25, but it was over like 6.25 hours. So it's like, if you can maintain just under a 12-minute pace for 31 miles, that's awesome. So aim for 6 hours, and a stretch goal, if you really want to stretch yourself, go for 5 hours, 40 minutes, which would be about an average 11-minute, 15 pace. So then in my mind, that's what I'm going for. So we talked about what's my strategy. He said, you know, start out slow. Don't rush out of the gate, because you've never gone this far before. And one of the nice things about running ultras is you never, or running pretty much like any long distance race, is you never run the race distance until the race. So you don't actually know what's going to happen. And 2 weeks before I ran my race, Josh ran his first 100-miler. He said, now he's done 100 Ks, which is 62 miles. But he has no idea what happens after 62 miles to his body. So he had to go there in order to experience it. And I think he came in third in the race. He did it in under 23 hours, less than 23 hours, 100 miles. And his, you know, something, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I've run up to 25 miles. I've never run it straight. I've had, you know, plenty of breaks. Every time I did a longer run, I failed in some way. So my first long run was 13 miles. And this was, you know, months ago in June. It's 13 miles straight. What I discovered is that when you run 13 miles straight and you're wearing regular clothes, you will have chafing that like you can't believe. So my, you know, I could not touch my, you know, blood coming down. The other areas where there were, you know, moving parts, there was chafing that meant I could not walk. Oh. So like, okay, well, I'm glad I learned that today. And so I said, what do I do for that? And Josh said, oh, you know, for the nipples, you can put on Band-Aids or Scotch tape, or I went online, there's a product called Glide. So it looks like a little stick deodorant.
You mean for the race, not for the recovery?
No, for whenever I run a long distance again.
Okay.
So for the race, but also the next week I did a 15 and then 18 and 20 and 15. All of those, anything over 8 miles, I had to worry about chafing. So then I said, what about down there? So we got compression shorts that they're very, very sort of tight boxers that stop things from rubbing against each other. So okay, so I went out and bought those. So and then then at 15 miles, I realized I was wearing the wrong shoes. And so the longer you do a distance, the more mistakes come up. So I knew that there would be points of failure at 31 miles that I'd never had, even at 25. And that's part of what I was anticipating. And Josh was saying, look, somewhere around mile 23, 24, 25, you're going to get to a place where everything's going to suck. And you're just going to want to give up, and you're going to feel like you can't do it. And that's where your learning comes from. That's where you have to dig deep, because you've already experienced everything up to 25 miles. But this is where you learn something about yourself. So I had that in my head. And I get to the starting line, and it's a much smaller race than I thought. So there were 68 entrants, and I think a bunch of them had left at 7 a.m. So there didn't seem like maybe 50 of us. And they count down, and then I can't even remember if it was a gun or a buzzer or a bell or something, but we started moving, and I had been chatting with a guy, just sort of, you know, made eye contact, said hello, started chatting, and figured, you know, 6 hours of running. A lot of people had earphones, and I don't know if they're listening to music. I assume it was music, because music can tend to make you go faster or, you know, buoy your spirits.
We're listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would have laid down in a ditch and crawled up if I had to listen to my podcast during that race. But I decided I didn't want to bring a phone. I didn't want an earphone. I just wanted to be like totally present. I'm not even a good enough runner to run without hurting myself unless I'm paying very exquisite attention. Like, you do something, I mean, running is like the ultimate repetitive motion. So if I'm not paying attention and now I get a pain because I've been listening to something and not paying attention. So I really wanted to, but 6 hours, and I figured, conversation, we're having a really good conversation. It's really fun. And then I noticed after the first half mile that we're going at about a 9:15 pace. And Josh and I had figured out that my pace for the first 10, 15 miles should be 10 minutes, 30 seconds. That's how I don't bonk, sort of where you run out. And we'd also talked about nutrition, about how much, I have to eat and drink to stay ahead of my hunger and thirst, because the minute you feel hungry, the minute your muscles are depleted of glycogen, it's kind of all over. So eat more than you think you need to eat, drink before you think you need to drink, all that. So I was following everything about the plan, except I'm going really fast. But remember, it was just like that Thursday, Friday run. I'm going at about a 9:20, 9:15, 9:30, depending on whether we were going up or down a little bit. I had a slow mile where I stopped to use a bathroom. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and it seemed like a much better idea even later.
Meanwhile, what happened to the guy you were talking with?
Well,
You just kept.
No, it was at an aid station. So he filled up with something. Right. I just ran into the bathroom, and then we just sort of caught up to each other and kept running. And we're at mile 8, and we're still right at a 9-minute pace, 9:15, 9:20. The turnaround, it's an out and back race. So you run away 16 miles and run back 15, because there was a little extra jiggle on the way out, so that it wasn't exactly the same route, but essentially the same route there and back. And we're running, and we get to the 16-mile mark, and I'm still comfortable at this 9-minute something pace. And then my new friend he goes to the bathroom, and at the halfway point at this aid station, we have our drop bags, which is whatever you want it to bring, you give them, and then they have it there. So people can bring, change of shoes, because your feet sometimes swell, or like if it's a humid day, your feet are all sweaty. So I packed everything. I had the biggest drop bag of anyone there. It was in this like giant Rubbermaid tub. I didn't know what I would need. Mm-hmm. I decided I was feeling good enough. All I did was I changed my shirt and my headband, and I just left everything else. And then my friend spent a little bit more time there, and he stopped to eat a little bit, and he said, I'll catch up with you. By the way, he's like 16 years younger than me. So like I was keeping up with his pace. But I felt, okay, I've done 16 miles. I'll keep going. He said, I'll catch up. So I'm sure you will. And so I started running back, this time by myself. And it's doing good until mile 23. And I don't know if it was because of the physiology or because I had it in my head that mile 23, but I started having like sciatic pain down my left leg. And it wasn't just sort of like pain, it was like, like nerve pain, like that feels like weakness. And I'm starting to limp. And I'm putting all my weight on my right leg, and I'm just looking at my Garmin, and I'm down to like an 11-minute pace. I'm like, oh man, I screwed up. I went too fast. I didn't follow the plan. And I'm powering through, and then we get to a little downhill. I said, okay, I'm just gonna pick this up a little bit. And then I thought about it, like, why mile 23? And I thought about what happens when I sit down to meditate. So I'll sit down with the intention of sitting very, very still for 20 minutes, which means I'm not going to respond to external stimuli that would normally drag me away. So I get an idea, like, oh, I just have an idea for an article, or for an episode of Tribe Well TV, or The Cure for Cancer, or whatever it is. I would normally write that down. I don't want to forget that. When I'm meditating, I make a vow to myself that I'm not going to write anything down. If it's good, it'll come back later. And because what happens is you sit down and meditate, and the mind doesn't like that. The mind is bored. The mind is afraid that I'm going to discover that it's not the be all and end all of existence. So it's saying, hey, I'm really important. I've had an idea. Pay attention to me. Hey, I had a thought. Hey, hey, want to hear a joke? And the longer I sit, the more frantic it gets. So now it knows that it can't fool me with ideas anymore. So now what it does is it creates itches. Sit down like this, my nose will itch. Oh, it's so easy to just, okay, now I can go back to meditating, right? Wouldn't you think? And my brain is going, just scratch the itch so you can go back to meditating. And then you leave it alone, and then it's, oh, now it's moving. It's moving. Oh, right here. Oh. Come on. And then if I go off, if my attention wavers, I'll discover myself, I'm like a dog with fleas. Like, oh, it feels so good. Oh, right, meditating. And I have to go back to it. And it's true that once I've scratched, then it's easier to go back to meditating. But what not giving in teaches me is really important. First of all, it teaches me that I get to have choice about resisting temptations. So just as I could sit there and not scratch. So my friend Peter Bregman has a whole book basically about this one concept called 4 seconds, which is if you can control yourself for 4 seconds, you can avoid all sorts of stupid career-ending mistakes, right? I mean, you just resist the temptation to blurt something or do something or say something. Like how many times in our lives does stuff come out of our mouths that we go, oh, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Did I just say that?
Oh, gee. Right? And so 4 seconds, a pause of 4 seconds can allow us to assess the situation. So that's one reason that's so valuable, to not scratch that itch in the moment, but just be with it. The second thing is you realize that those are phantoms, that you don't scratch your nose all the time during the day. It's not random that these things come up while I'm meditating. They are manufactured by my mind in an attempt to test me and lure me away from this hard thing I'm doing. So I decided that that's what was happening with my body. That when I thought about it, it didn't feel like damage. It felt like discomfort, it felt like pain, it felt like agony, but not damage. And so I said, you're not going to fool me. I'm going to keep running. And so I was able to pick up my pace again. We at the last aid station before the end. I refilled my water, and they gave me cold water, from which I think at that point I was starting to overheat, so I could feel it helping me. I came back to like a 9-minute pace for another few miles, and then near the end, my legs just about gave out, where there was not much running left in them. And I'm looking now, I've got about 2 miles to go. And for the first time, I hear people coming up and they're going to pass me. And that was one thing I decided when I decided I was going to set this 10:30 pace at the beginning. I didn't want anyone to pass me. Like, okay, I'll go slow, but I'm going to be smart about it. And I'm going to pass other people. Because you know what? Because I've trained for this race, and I have the capacity, and I'm going to pass other people who maybe haven't trained as hard, or who've not run a smarter race. But there I was in the position that I said I wasn't going to be in. I've maybe overrun the first half of the race, and now I'm fading, and everyone's going to pass me. Now, it happened twice before that someone came up, and they started to pass me, and both of those other times at about mile 19 and mile 22 or 23, I said, I'm going to use you, if that's all right. And what are they going to do? And I just ran with them, and they helped me get my pace back up. I saw them as angels, sort of coming to remind me to keep running hard. And in both of those cases, what I could hear was they were breathing harder than I was. And I wasn't sure, but I felt like that meant that I was stronger, that if my breathing was good, then I could outlast them. And that's what happened in both cases, until these two women came up with 2 miles left. And I found out later that I think they're mother and daughter. One of them's like 5 years older than me. One of them's in her 20s. And they came up and they were going to pass me. And I said, oh, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to use them. And I'm running with them for a mile, going now again around a 9:20, 9:30 pace. And I'm listening, and they are much stronger than I am. They're like having conversations. They're chatting. And I'm like, and I realized, you know what? And that's the decision that I had to make. Do I try to stay with them for that last mile? And do I try, because the last 5 miles, my plan was, and this was something that Josh had told me, this is when you feel like your legs are giving out, like you don't always have to fight it. You can walk for a little bit, learn how to fast walk. He was teaching me in some of my longer runs near the end, walk at a 14-minute pace. So you're not walking at a 20-minute or 25-minute pace, and then you can sort of catch up on it. So I decided my last 5 miles were going to be at about between a 10:30 and 11 pace. And I was going to walk the first tenth of each of those miles to just allow me to recover. And then I was able to get back down because I had this, the watch that would tell me, here's my mile pace. So I just walked for 1/10 of a mile. Now I have to go a little bit faster to stay within my training, my running plan. And so then we did our mile together with these 2 women and me. And then we got to the mile 30, 1 mile to go. And I have to decide, do I keep running with them or do I stick to my plan? And I decided to stick to my plan. And at this moment, I don't know if that was the right decision. If I could have pushed it, I probably would have thrown up across the finish line, but I could have maybe been competitive with them. And I said, no, I'm just going to stick to the plan. Their appearance here doesn't change anything for me. And so that's something that I want to learn in the next race, because I don't know if I made the right decision. I know I made the safer decision, but whether I would have beaten them or not, I don't know. It would have been nice to be 18 instead of 20. High. And my number was 36, 2 times high. And what I was feeling at that point was severe discomfort, but again, not danger. Like maybe I could have run with them. I didn't. And I finished in 5 hours, 8 minutes, and 40 seconds, which was over 30 minutes faster than my stretch time, which blew me away. Oh, and the other thing is that as I was doing this 9:30 pace for the first half, now I started, even as I was saying, well, this is stupid, this is not what I planned, I was also thinking, like my ego is going, oh boy, you could do it in under 5 minutes. Oh, Josh is going to be so amazed. All these people on Strava are going to be so impressed. And I was like, my ego was like starting to like take over the race. I thought that is a really dangerous thing. That's like letting your toddler drive and you go to sleep in the back seat. Like, so I was aware of it. And I was like, okay, my ego is having such a great time now fantasizing about all the kudos I'm going to get. And maybe, I didn't even see that many people pass me because it's a there and back. So you can see everyone who's ahead of you. I didn't see that. Maybe I'm even winning. Like the crazy thoughts. Like, and just to give you perspective on how close I was to winning, the winner came in at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I mean 3 hours and 30 minutes. So that's like an hour and 40 minutes faster than me. Like that's how far I was from winning. But that's what's going through my head. Mm-hmm. So I have to tell myself, I have to remember, the ego is not in charge here. The ego can play. I wasn't like I need to cage the ego or shut it up or ignore it. I just had to recognize that, it was having its thoughts. It was enjoying the hell out of thinking I could break 5 hours. Maybe I could get it in 4:45, like, and not letting it run the race for me. So I'm telling that long story, again, largely because I want to brag, because I'm really, really happy with my decisions from the day that I said I was going to do it, to deciding to stick with the plan, to enduring the pain, to making some decisions that were less careful than I've used to, and maybe suffering some, a little bit of damage that needs to be repaired along the way. And One thing that I discovered, so Josh talks a lot, we both talk a lot about vitamin P, which is vitamin pain. Like human beings need pain.
Right.
If you
No
live,
pain, no gain.
yeah, well, not just that in the moment, but if we don't have pain in our lives and we don't embrace discomfort, I mean, you were in the army, right?
You don't appreciate when there isn't.
You don't appreciate when there isn't, and you're terrified of it.
Yeah.
So if you live your life in a little box, you're terrified of what might be outside of that box. But once you experience it, it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't so terrible. Then you start to relax when you're in the box because you're not scared of stepping out of it by accident. It's like you're walking on a broad highway, a broad bridge, rather than a 2x4 between two buildings. You know, you don't have to feel stressed about it. And the other thing, you know, so what I was looking for is like I knew that 31 miles I was going to have pain. And what I wanted to do was ideally just enjoy the race. Like, you know, like if the whole race had been just this 18-minute run of 9 minutes, there was no pain. I wasn't, you know, it was just fun. It just felt good. But I knew that there was, if I did that, that I wasn't, as Josh puts it, emptying my capacity. I spent 12 weeks, 3 months building my capacity, and on race day is when I want to empty it, when I want to see what I've done. And if I just sort of jog the race in, and if I had done that 10:30 pace, I would have finished in 5 hours and 55 minutes. I would have probably felt much better at the end, but I wouldn't have known. I felt like this race emptied my capacity. I could not have, maybe I could have done a little faster at the end. At the end, maybe. But 99% I emptied out everything I had. I could not have done better. And in fact, when I was running and I saw the finish line, and there's this big, you know, LCD display counting it down, and I saw I was at 5:08, and I wanted to beat 5:10. Like that was the goal I was thinking of in my head now. If I can't beat 5, I can beat 5:10 because 5:10, 31 miles, 310 minutes is 10 minutes per mile. I could do the whole thing in an average of under 10 minutes per mile, including all my stops, including food, going to the bathroom, drink, limping, everything. Changing my clothes, under 10 minutes. So I was going, and then I saw that, and then I ran as fast as I could that last leg, that last little bit. And I have no idea if it looked fast or not, but it was as fast as I could to you know, to be drawn to that. So I didn't enjoy the race the way you enjoy or run a beautiful walk in the park or something like that. But my goal was to enjoy the pain. Right, so that it was what Dan Ariely calls benign masochism, where a lot of distance athletes and where you enjoy the fact that you're in pain. I didn't quite get there either, but here's where I got to. I enjoyed, even in that moment of pain, I enjoyed who I was becoming by virtue of enduring the pain. Like there was a kernel of pleasure. It was very deep and it was hard to find, but I found it. There was a kernel of pleasure of being a person who was going to say, I don't care about this sciatica. I'm going to push through as hard as I can. And I'm going to be smart about it. I'm not going to just try to run. I'm going to stop. I'm going to walk. I'm going to use all the strategies I have. But I enjoy that I'm becoming this person that I wasn't before.
You learn how to manage it.
Yeah.
And you could say, I did it.
Yeah. Yeah, which is very different. It's not something, it's not that, you know, I've always written about things. I've always taught about them. But here is a case of me saying, no, I'm going to become this. Remember that conversation with Josh? Like, I want to understand what this is like. And in the process, and I did it so that I could help write a book, but in the end, it transformed me. I'm a different person now, a very different person now than I was when I made that initial statement that I wanted to run a 50K. And so before we close, I want to share, I've shared a lot of details, and I don't know if anyone cares about this beyond me. But one thing I realized is that, you know, people who want to be well, who want their futures to be better, very often use words like hope. Like, I hope this works, and I want to have faith, and I need proof, And there's a lot of doubt. So that, Voltaire said, without doubt, there is no faith. Right? So if you knew absolutely,
Yeah.
you wouldn't need faith. Right? I don't need faith in this pen. It's not like, I get kudos from rabbis for going, I believe in this pen. Like belief in God is harder because it's not a pen. So without doubt, there is no faith. But at the same time, why do we need doubt about the future when so much of it is in our hands? Now, obviously, I'm not excluding getting hit by a bus or a meteor hitting the earth, anything like that. But there's so much about our lives that are in our control that we still use those languages. I hope this diet works for me. And I entered this running with that idea. Like Josh sent me this PDF. I'm like, boy, I hope this works. I hope this helps prepare me for the 50K. And here's what I got out of it. That hope and faith were completely unnecessary because I just did the thing. And what was remarkable was those first 22 miles for the race, after having trained as hard as I was supposed to and rested a little bit more than I was supposed to, it was easy. It was almost like walking on water. Like, oh my God, how am I doing this? I don't understand. And I realized you don't need faith. You don't need hope. You just do the thing. If you see other people succeeding and they give you the benefit of their wisdom. There's so many people that I talk about a plant-based diet with, a whole food plant-based diet. They go, boy, I'd love for that to work. I really hope that, and they've got all this, like, I had the same thing. But if you just do it, it doesn't matter what you hope. It doesn't matter what you have faith in. It doesn't matter what you believe. If you just do it, the laws of the universe will reciprocate. So it's not about, I wish, I hope, I want, could this work? It's about do. If you do it, it will work. And that's what I discovered. And I discovered a whole new level of something of confidence, of an understanding of the universe beyond faith, way beyond faith. That now I know if I wanted to run a 50-mile race, I know what I have to do to get ready, and I know that I can. If I want to do 100, if I want to run across the Sahara, if I want to run from New York to San Francisco, I know I might not have the means to do it. Like there might be certain things that I'd have to do that I'm not willing to do, or I don't have the money to do, or the time to do, or they're impractical for various other reasons. But the plan gets you there. If you see other people who have succeeded at something that you want to succeed at, and you have no reason to believe they're lying to you, do what they did, and you'll get to where they got. And that's kind of like the big takeaway that I can share. That now I'm like, why am I a better health coach now? Why am I better at helping other people attain their health goals, their wellness goals? Because I went through something that, I mean, first of all, I've also lost 20 pounds since I started doing it in May. I'm at a really good weight. I feel really good about my body. I discovered that now pull-ups and push-ups are easier because I weigh less. And I discovered on Saturday that the training I had done had prepared me way beyond my wildest dreams for an achievement that I would not have thought possible. I came in 20th, came in 4th in my age gender class. Man, men in their 50s are beasts. There are 3 men out of the first 19, 3 men in their 50s who ran so much faster than me that had I wanted to be 3rd, I would have had to run like 45 minutes faster. Like, I'm not going, oh, I just missed. I was 4th. I was almost 3rd. I was almost 3rd by 45 minutes. And you know what? Those 2 women who ran past me, like part of my childish competitive brain was like, damn. But my wise brain goes, they trained for this. One of them I looked them up. One of them had run this race last year or 2 years ago. The other one was their first 50K. They out-trained me. And so they got a better result than me.
That's okay.
It's fine. You know, Josh has outtrained me too because he's been doing it longer. It's like it's democracy. It's like everyone has the same 24 hours in the day, and if somebody beats me, look, there's like the genetic lottery, right? If someone is just genetically better able to sprint, better able to run long distances, there's nothing I can do about that.
Nope.
If someone is lucky on that day and they wake up and all of a sudden everything is just working perfectly, and then their biorhythms, nothing I can do about that. If someone runs a smarter race and they really are paying attention to their body and they've planned it out and they're strategically intelligent, like maybe that's what the case was with these two women. They were, maybe if I'd run 940s, I would have had a better time. They were smarter than me, and so they were able to catch me at the end. Or they just did more training. And by more training, I can mean over years. I don't know what they did before they were doing this, but I know Josh didn't run 100 until he'd run a 50-miler, and he didn't run a 50-miler until he'd run a 50K, and he didn't run a 50K until he ran a marathon, and he didn't run a marathon until he ran a 10K. His first race was a 10K that he came in 2 hours. So I like to begrudge him the years that he spent training would be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is my first one. I've been doing it for 12 weeks. And so the next one, so I get to know, I get feedback from the race as to how I'm doing. So I'm not just relying on, oh, I feel good today, I'm proud of myself. You know, Josh says there's a whole thing where people like, you know, you do like couch to 5K, like, well, you know, well, I did a 5K, I walked it, I went really slow, but there's people sitting on the couch, and he goes, you know, that's an effing low bar. The couch, like showing up at the start line is great, but that's the price of admission, like working the race. And that's kind of what I've learned through this whole process. And I don't know what it sounds like, whether it sounds like I'm bragging, but I suppose maybe I am. But what I'm bragging about is not the time or even the effort that I've put in. I think I'm feeling really proud about saying yes. And I said yes to the idea of the race, and I said yes to surrendering my will to a coach, to someone who's been there before me. And those are really the only two things that I did. And everything else just followed. And so I'm curious whether people listening to this, if there's any useful lessons, if everyone just tuned this out because I'm just blabbering on. But it was on my mind. It's still in my legs. And if this encourages anybody else to go do something that you haven't done before, you know, I'm pretty much the poster child for that. And now I'm hooked, and I'm wondering what's my next challenge. And I hope to be back here to report on it when the time comes. So that's it for me. If you want to get more about me, you can go to plantyourself.com. I've got the podcast, as we mentioned. Plant Yourself. I do health coaching. I do consulting. I do writing. And I do talking. So everybody have a fabulous week. May your bipedal locomotion take you to beautiful and exciting and invigorating places. And as always, be well, my friends.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.